I'd just like to welcome everyone. We're really thrilled to have you, our members, joining us from all around the world. Hopefully we'll have a few more of us joining in as we proceed. I'd like to welcome you to this event. We've called this Re-Envisioning the Immersive Web with WebXR, because the immersive web's been around a little bit now for a year or two, but WebXR is going to take it to a whole new level, and that's what really we want to show you today. So my name's Brian Richards. I'm VP, Director of the International Virtual Reality Professionals Association, often known as IVRPA. And my co-host today is our Director, Rachel Bracker. Rachel, would you like to say hello?
Yes, hi. I'll try to project so everyone on Zoom can hear us too. Thank you, Brian, for that intro. And I just want to say a few words about the IVRPA before we get started today. We are a nonprofit organization supported by our members, sponsors, and operated by volunteers. And fun fact, we're the longest continuously running global community of VR professionals and enthusiasts. So today, as Brian said, we have an incredible lineup of industry leaders, experts in the field, who will be sharing how their companies and products are transforming the immersive web. So Brian, I'll pass it back to you to introduce our first speaker today.
Thank you, Rachel. So I'm pleased to welcome Gabe Baker here today to open our event. Gabe was nominated and voted for WebXR Developer of 2020 earlier this year for his work on Frame. Gabe's a former teacher and an education researcher. He's now in product development at Ibrpa and product manager for Frame. Gabe's interests include many and varied interests. He's interested in humanities, product development, educational technology, VR, WebXR, gaming, narrative-based learning, virtual worlds, and he even has a background in Latin and Greek, as well as JavaScript, which I think may be quite appropriate. So Gabe, very much welcome to you today. And you're going to tell us all about how Frame can be used in collaboration and creation of 3D environments, I hope. And also a little bit about the significance of WebXR and the immersive web. So over to you, Gabe.
Okay, I hope you all can see my screen. I'm going to present it. As Brian mentioned earlier, if you want to zoom in to it, I believe you can do this. Just click on the streaming screen and then you'll see a button to zoom in. I'm going to kind of rip through this. As Brian said, I'm here to talk a little bit about Frame. I'm actually more interested in talking a little bit about WebXR kind of generally and its significance, but they're all kind of woven together. Frame, of course, is still with WebXR, so we feel strongly about it, and we believe that it's in its possibility. So just for those that might not know, and I know that many of you do know, and for many of you, this will be just kind of the ABCs of the space that you live and work in. So, fundamentally, WebXR it's a browser API, and it's a browser API put together by a diverse group of people from a diverse group of companies, some big, some small, some individuals that contribute through the regular web standards process. And regular web standards, these are standards that are not just created by usually like a particular company. These are standards that are open source, that are usually made in collaboration between a lot of different people. And WebXR is one of those. And as a browser API, it's technology that's actually built into the browser, right? It's not a plugin you need to download on top of it. It's not an application that you need to download. It's really technology built in at the browser level that gives the browser certain capabilities. In this case, with WebXR, it gives the browser the ability to use a external piece of hardware, like a VR headset or an AR headset, as an input device. So I think Richard here came in, on an Oculus Quest 2. It's the WebXR API that makes it so that his Oculus Quest 2 controller can be a device that gives input to the web browser. And then we can work with that input to display virtual hands in the 3D space and so forth. So it's a crucial kind of bridge technology between the browser and this host of hardware that is entering the market now. And not just VR headsets, but also AR headsets as well. So then the question comes up, well, does this work in all browsers then? Because it's a browser API. And the answer to that is a little bit more complicated. It certainly works in Chrome, which has had support for WebXR for some time now. And other Chromium-based browsers, like the new Edge from Microsoft, also have WebXR support. I believe Firefox has the latest WebXR support, but the elephant in the room is, per usual, Safari. And Safari is usually a little bit late to the game when it comes to adopting web standards generally, but they are particularly late to the game on WebXR and a few other pieces of technology that really empower the web browser to deliver native-like experiences. And there's a lot of speculation about why this is the case, but at a high level, it's not too controversial of a statement to say that Apple really wants super high quality experiences to be delivered through the Apple App Store, where they get a cut of the revenue. If they really empowered Safari to deliver native-like experiences with very good graphics and things like WebXR and stuff like that, then there's a chance that they might get less revenue from the App Store, because Safari would actually become a viable vehicle for the delivery of really high quality stuff. So Apple kind of deliberately makes Safari a little bit crappy, and there is no WebXR on Safari. Now, there are hints that Apple is actually working on WebXR in Safari. This is wonderful. You know, there's big speculation that Apple will be putting out Apple glasses, you know, augmented reality hardware that you put on your face and gives you an overlay over the world that you're looking on. If Apple wants Safari to be a viable application on the Apple glasses, they're going to need WebXR support on Safari. So we see that it's in the works. We'll see how it goes. There are other things like WebGL2 that just landed in Safari. The latest iOS, like when the new iOS comes out 15, it'll have official support for WebGL2. WebGL is another one of these technologies that WebXR experiences really rely on. It lets the browser deliver complex graphics in a nutshell. So there's hope. Now, on the Oculus Quest, for those of you that are curious, the Oculus browser is a Chromium browser. It's based on Chromium, and as such, it's easy for them to have that WebXR support that Chrome has, which is also based on Chromium. Okay, moving on though. So who cares about WebXR generally? You know, okay, so you can make stuff in the browser that's 3D and can work on headsets and stuff like that. Who cares about that? So for one, people who don't like installing apps just generally, or who don't like the business model of app stores, these walled gardens that Apple has, and even to some extent Android has, but Android's is a little bit more open. Some people just don't like installing apps. Some companies don't like their employees installing apps. This isn't just always necessarily like a personal preference kind of thing. Some companies just make it actually difficult for their employees to use enterprise hardware if it's a downloadable application. So these people care. People who like building with open source tools. Now this is a big one. If you're building a native VR application, you're often using tools like Unity 3D or the Unreal Engine, tools that are extremely sophisticated and empowering and wonderful. And I don't mean to knock them, but these are tools that are owned by and created by publicly traded companies who, of course, will always be prioritizing the interests of their shareholders. Now, often what that means is they make beautiful, amazing, incredible products, but as you're using them, you become beholden to their business model and you're using proprietary tools. That's often just what you want, and that's fine. But if you like building with open source tools, like building with regular web technology, then WebXR might make sense. So web developers care. And there are a lot more web developers in the world than there are Unity developers or Unreal developers. So for all of the hundreds of thousands of web developers in the world to be able to use the skills that they already know, the JavaScript and HTML and TypeScript, to build VR stuff, that's incredible. And these people care. And people who are trying to build these applications care, because it's sometimes easier to hire web developers than it is to hire Unity developers. So it goes. People who care about accessibility. So people who really prioritize in their experience ease of access. This is a big deal, right? In Frame, we had to go with WebXR because it was so important to us that people could just access Frame right from a web browser with one click. That's how all of you came into here today, right? And that's a brilliant, beautiful thing. We wanted to make it this way so that people on the Oculus Quest could access Frame without downloading a new application. Just open up the Oculus browser. So people who care about accessibility, low friction, low barriers to entry for their experience, they will care about WebXR. If you like building on one thing and having it work on a lot of things, WebXR is good for that, right? We have one code base for Frame that essentially works across devices. Richard here in VR, it's the same code that we're using here. Some differences, of course, but you build once and deploy everywhere. And that's not as easy as it would be if you were using something like Unity or Unreal, so that you have to package multiple native applications. But with WebXR, you're kind of just building once, and it'll work anywhere with the browser that supports WebXR. And then my own little personal soapbox piece here, other people who care about WebXR are people who kind of inherently or sort of appreciate at least a little bit this idea of, everyone is talking about the metaverse, big conferences just dedicated to what is the metaverse and metaverse this and metaverse that. And in my strong opinion, the metaverse has been here for as long as the web browser has existed. The web browser is a portal with which you travel between different nodes, different websites that are interlinked together via a common platform, a common mechanism. That mechanism is the web browser. So when I think about the metaverse, I just think about the web browser. And yes, Frame is part of it because it's easy to get to Frame from a web browser, but so is every other immersive experience on the web. And so is every website generally, whether it's immersive or not, that we're connected. So when I think about traveling the metaverse, like, yeah, you're bouncing between different 3D experiences, but you're bouncing between all manner of experiences, whether they're 3D or not, or what have you. Okay, I'm gonna end that rant because I get fired up about this. The web browser, it gets it done. It's the metaverse. So, as I said, I think I had already gone over this, but who makes WebXR generally? So it's worth emphasizing, right? It's not Unity, it's not Unreal, it's not Facebook, it's not Apple. It's a coalition of people from, yes, all of those companies and other people as well. It's not a company that is solely shaping the direction of WebXR. So how can you build WebXR stuff? Maybe I've gotten you fired up. Maybe you're already fired up. Maybe you're already building, so this is just redundant for you. But there are lots of ways that you can build WebXR experiences, ranging from low code to no code to plenty of code. So on the no code side, you can certainly use tools like Frame or Mozilla Hubs is another fantastic one. And these tools basically let you, pick an environment and then bring in lots of different kinds of assets and set up your space. I'll get more into Frame later, but certainly Frame is and Mozilla Hubs, these are sort of drag and drop interfaces that actually let you do a lot of different things. And beyond just moving some things around, we provide different levels of interactivity. You can make little buttons that do different things. And then, a key sort of enabling technology and kind of adjacent technology to all of this WebXR stuff is the actual 3D models that you're in, right? The thing that's actually taking up most of your visual perspective right now, it's not me, it's not my stupid slide deck, it's not the avatars, it's the auditorium that we're in, right? It's this theater space. And the people who know how to build this stuff, if you set these up the right way, then it's really easy to bring these into WebXR experiences. So, tools like Sketchfab that are just these big repositories of 3D models that you can upload to, and then even create interesting stuff within Sketchfab. Sketchfab is powered by WebXR. Things like Blender that just let you get to the nitty gritty of creating these 3D environments or 3D models. Blender is like a key piece of the ecosystem that WebXR is a part of. We make all of our environments for Frame in Blender, and then we bring them into Frame. And then there are tons of different tools out there that let you do really fancy things with 360 photos. Now, Brian's already brought a 360 photo of some sort into here. It looks really cool. It's kind of like purplish sky. But there are some tools out there that are specifically dedicated to 360 photo editing and manipulation that kind of let you make a nice like 360 photo with hotspots and things like that. And you do all that without coding. And many of those tools are built with WebXR. Now, if you want to get into code, you are not short of really powerful options. There's a web development framework out there called A-Frame that lets you build incredibly sophisticated applications with JavaScript and HTML. And if you know just a little bit of HTML, you can actually just be off to the races using the skills that you know, the HTML that you know, and maybe a little bit of JavaScript to build stuff. We used to build Frame with A-Frame. Frame used to be built entirely with A-Frame. I know that's confusing, Frame, A-Frame, but whatever, it is what it is. But A-Frame is fantastic, and it's open source. And if you're curious to dive into A-Frame, there are lots of courses out there that get you into it. Before I really got started with Frame, I actually built a curriculum of like how to learn A-Frame development from scratch. It was really intended for teachers and students who might be learning their very first line of HTML. And they learn it by creating like a spatial website. I think I still have this site live. I think this is the URL. I'll put it in the text chat just in case anyone's curious, but there's like some scaffolded projects there for diving into A-Frame development, just in case you want to go there. A little bit more complex, a little bit like kind of lower level than A-Frame. A-Frame abstracts a lot of it away so that you can just write one line of HTML to make something really cool. But if you want to go a little bit lower level, you're working with other frameworks. A very popular one is called 3.js. And 3.js is a JavaScript framework with very good documentation, very strong open source community. And if you dive into 3.js, you can build basically whatever you want. There's no doubt about it. You can, if you have the idea, you can pretty much build it. Babylon.js is an open source 3D development framework from Microsoft. We at Frame have rebuilt Frame recently with Babylon.js, so we certainly do love it, but we recognize that there are lots of really good ones out there. We loved A-Frame too. We do like Babylon more for reasons that are specific to our application, and we're partnered with the Babylon team in some pretty deep ways. So Babylon.js is fantastic. And then there are some tools that kind of give you a Unity 3D like visual editor. Like Unity 3D is this very powerful tool for making native applications, and it gives you a real cool like visual editor. And there are some tools that let you build WebXR experiences with this kind of editor. One of them is called Play Canvas. It's very cool, very sophisticated, gives you a very neat visual editor and lets you write all the code that you need to write. Same with the Wonderland engine. This is a more recent one. The Wonderland engine is very cool. Lets you do the same kind of thing. And then finally, if you want to use Unity, there are people that are working on an exporter from Unity to WebXR. Now, I think this is a little bit, in my opinion, like if you're going to build WebXR, just like build with a proper web development tool. But Unity is a very sophisticated tool. They went public earlier this year, I think, and and they have a great editor. I don't think everything in Unity you can just port over to a WebXR experience, but they do have a builder of sorts. So I think for simple things, if you want to build it in Unity and then try to port it to WebXR, I think that's a route as well. And certainly some people are just already familiar with Unity and the programming languages used in Unity, so they just use what they use and then export it to WebXR. Now, I mentioned like adjacent technologies in this space. There are a lot of them. The 3D model format, .gltf, that is kind of specifically built to perform well in this kind of web runtime environment. GLTF is profoundly important to WebXR. All of our avatars here are GLTF models. The theater is a GLTF model. You can bring GLTF models just directly into Frame I'll bring in a Triceratops here in just a second. Here we go. So here we have it. I just brought this in right from my computer, and hopefully it loaded in not too much time. Can I get a thumbs up emoji for anyone who sees the Triceratops? The emoji's up at the top left. Okay, I'm seeing I'm seeing some emojis flying. Okay, brilliant. So you can see you can bake animations onto GLTX. So that's why the Triceratops is hopping around. And you can bring quite big models into Frame as well. And if you've got your own environment model, you can bring that right into Frame as well. Below the environment picker, you can just upload your own environment. We will dynamically create the colliders so that people can't walk through walls. And it's a pretty cool feature. I will say, for those that use Frame who are interested in getting a little sneak peek of what's to come, we have some improvements coming to our 3D model uploader. So I know up to now you've been limited by 15 megabytes in your uploader. Now we have a very sophisticated model optimization pipeline that's coming that'll basically let you pick much bigger models. And then we are generally able to squish it down to below 15 megabytes without losing any or just a little bit of visual fidelity. It's going to be very cool. So stay tuned for that. I think it'll come in hopefully a week or two. I mentioned WebGL, WebGL2. These are browser APIs that are very important for performant 3D on the web. Better GPUs, as the GPU, there's a shortage right now in the world of GPUs because demand is so high. But generally speaking, the quality of GPUs is going up. More and more machines have better graphics processing units, and this is good for WebXR. WebAssembly and Web GPU. So these are really interesting technologies that basically their goal is to let the browser take advantage of your hardware in a way that native applications can and do. So right now, the browser is actually really limited in terms of what processing power it can use. And this is going to be changed with WebAssembly and Web GPU. These two things, as they get fleshed out more at the browser level, I'm fairly confident are going to make it so that you can run things in the web browser that you would not be able to tell whether it was a native application or a website at all. I just totally true. This is a belief of ours. We believe that this is the case, and it's the reason why we're building for the web. The thing with the web is everyone always says, oh, but you can do so much more with native. That is true, but often you don't need to do that much more. Like Frame right now, this is working right now, 20 of us here, and we didn't need WebAssembly for this. But as these technologies mature, that's what's going to let Frame get to having 500 people in Frame at once in more sophisticated environments and things like that. And we'll get there. And then of course VR headsets and AR headsets. These are key pieces of technology that are driving the space forward. The Oculus Quest 2, the Oculus browser team really believes in WebXR. These are people that said, hey, we're going to make sure that the Oculus Quest 2 is a really good vehicle for WebXR experiences. And they're really committed to working on WebXR and making sure WebXR works on their devices. And the Microsoft HoloLens, they have the Edge browser. And recently, Edge got WebXR support so that you can run WebXR experiences from the HoloLens. And WebXR, worth noting, it's not just VR, like AR is included there too. So, overlaying experiences on top of your visual field, you can do that with a website too, with WebXR. Now, a lot of people are making a bunch of noise about like cloud streaming and cloud rendering. And basically what this is, you can run really powerful applications somewhere in the cloud and then stream it down to someone's browser. And they say, oh, we've got it working in the browser. We're doing cloud rendering. A few things I want to just note about this. So first of all, cloud rendering is really still quite expensive. So if you're looking to do this at scale, you need to have just tremendous budget. And then I'd also just say that I don't think that we need to do streaming or cloud rendering to do 99% of the things that you can actually deliver with a well-built, optimized WebXR experience. I think that local machines, many of them, can handle very complex stuff. And as WebAssembly and WebGPU mature, I think the compelling case around just cloud rendering your stuff is actually going to get a little smaller and less compelling. We'll see. Of course, if you've got big budget and you just want to render some native application in the cloud and stream it down to people's web browsers, go for it. But that's not WebXR. And that's rendering a native application into a browser, which it is browser-based, but it's not WebXR. Okay. I've been in the weeds a little bit on technicalities. I hope it's been kind of just generally interesting for those of you that maybe didn't know that much about WebXR. For those of you that do, I know that that's just kind of repeat stuff that you all know. I want to talk a little bit about Frame and then end on some closing notes, and then if there's any chance for Q&A, that's fine too. So Frame, we're all in it, which is great. Thank you all for joining me in here. I think some people are watching through. I wait for you on the Zoom if you can see me. The primary goal of Frame is we want to make it really easy for people to come together in a 3D space. So one link, one click, you're in, boom. It's got to be that easy. And then we want to make it easy for people to look at a pretty wide range of things. So I brought in that dinosaur earlier. You can bring in 360 photos. We've got one up. You can bring in different environments. You can bring in really lots of stuff, videos, audio file, PDFs, things like that. And then you can arrange them. And then you can even make different scenes of content. So you all maybe see the car right now, but now you don't, because I took us to another scene that Brian had set up with another 360 photo, but then I can take us back. So it's kind of like a presentation tool as well. You can think of it as sort of like a 3D PowerPoint in some ways, but instead of moving through slides, you're moving through 3D scenes that you set up. So it's a pretty compelling way, I think, to take your audience on a bit of a journey, a spatial journey through content. If any of you want to pull out your laser pointer, you can press P to point at the car. And then we want to make it easy for people to present in and then manage these online gatherings. So tools for booting people and muting people and helping people come to certain spaces. We have a tool that lets you just click one button to bring everyone in the frame around you. And it's a no-code tool. So we really try to make Frame accessible for even non-developers, like non-technical people. Yes, there is a learning curve. We provide lots of helpful learning videos at learn.framevr.io/resources for anyone that wants to dive in. But our goal is really to make it like a tool that, a high school teacher could spend an hour to learn and then could use and make a really nice, compelling frame. I've seen Brian's contributed to some extraordinarily sophisticated and awesome frames, as have other people in this room. I think Richard is still here. I've seen some frames from the community that just astonish me with what you can make. At first glance, it's very simplistic. That's the idea. And then there's another sort of layer, if you want to get to that other layer of complexity where you're making little buttons that do different things, you can do that. So how are people using Frame? A lot of people use Frame who, as I mentioned, they're teachers who are using it for virtual classes or workshops. Certainly online events like this one, Frame is a great use case, helps people kind of come together with a sense of shared space and presence and togetherness in a way that feels qualitatively different and, in my opinion, a little better for things like this than a Zoom grid of video tiles. Video is really interesting, right? Because we don't knock video. I'm using video. I have video in here. When you've got a grid of video tiles, you do have a sense of presence, sort of, with other people, but you're really given a visual reminder that you're not actually in the same place if all that you're looking at is the video tiles. Whereas when you're in a 3D space like Mozilla Hubs or Frame or many others, yes, you can have video in the mix, but when you see each other's avatars in the same space, that really fosters that illusion of togetherness. You're seeing each other in a shared kind of co-located space. Sales demos, so people use Frame to look at 3D models of stuff they're trying to sell to other people, whether that thing is a shoe or a property that they have a 3D model of, or a refrigerator, or an airplane. You can come into Frame and bring in a 360 photo of a property you're trying to sell, or a 3D model of something you're trying to sell. So that kind of sales demo use case. Digital twinning. This is a big one we're seeing. People who want to be able to meet inside of a digital twin version of a real world location. And we have a use case on this topic that we're going to be able to share more about later this month with a company that you might have heard of called Trello from Atlassian. So Trello actually had us build a 3D recreation of their Trello office. In fact, I will quickly like navigate to it because I think I've got it up so you can see what it's like. And hopefully you can still sort of see my screen here. So Trello had a virtual offsite with their employees who are remote and all around. And they had their employees come together, 150 of them, in Oculus Quest, inside of Frame, inside of a 3D version of their office that we built for them. These murals that you see on the wall, these are in their actual office. This is their layout. And it was just a really magical experience to see this. These people, many of whom had seen this office before, some of whom were seeing it for the first time because they were more recent hires. And they came together and they talked and they laughed and they had whiteboards and people were having separate conversations all around the space. And it was just really extraordinary. And this use case of kind of digital twinning is certainly something that seems to be picking up. And what's cool about Frame is like, if you want to build the model yourself, you can do that. Now, if you want to have us do it, like we can do it too. We just worked with a bunch of photos of the space and we were able to recreate it. And my team, we've got very good 3D artists who can do this work, but there are good teams who can do this work all over the world. And if you don't want to deal with us, you don't have to. You can just have them make the model and then you can just bring it into Frame. Okay. You can also, also just general remote team collaboration is a use case that is fairly common. Just teams are remote. Many of these teams are staying remote even as COVID restrictions lift, and they're looking for other ways to collaborate besides Zoom that give their business or organization a sense of persistent space. Not just the space you come into for a meeting and then you're gone, but a space that, yes, you can hold meetings in, but yes, you just can kind of hang out in as well, and you can bump into people. Those kind of serendipitous interactions that are actually pretty difficult to achieve online. Frame is meant to kind of foster that, like it's your persistent space. Okay, a few real quick parting words. I've only got 7 minutes. I'm gonna try to rip through this. So parting thoughts, the web matters. The web is important. The web is kind of the last holdout of any kind of platform that goes beyond particular companies' app stores. That's important, and we need to value it and respect it, and it matters. The other point is build with what makes sense for you. I've been talking about WebXR, and we of course build with it, and we love it, but it doesn't make sense for everything. Sometimes you do want a native application built with Unity. Sometimes you do want specific things built with the Unreal Engine because of specific cool things that Unreal does. Build with the tool that makes the most sense given what you're trying to build and your values and your users. In my opinion, the choice of what you build with actually matters a lot less than the artistry and intention and ideas of what you're trying to build. Like, it's a lot harder to come up with a good idea right now than it is to build the idea or to find the people to build it. What matters more is like, yeah, it's less about, what you're building with and more about like, is what you're building actually compelling? Is it interesting? And that's actually the real challenge. It's not like picking, there's an abundance of riches, what to build with. WebXR, Unity, Unreal, they're all good choices. It's a choice of goods, tons of good tools. The real challenge is like, hey, can you actually make a cool experience? It's almost like more of like cinematography skills and ideation skills that are the really challenging questions right now. Like, what is it that you're trying to build? And why is it going to be good? Also, just keep in mind, like, this is nascent in the game. We're early in this whole space. All of us are kind of pioneers just by being interested in WebXR as much as we think it's mainstream. It's still not quite there. It's made big leaps and bounds, but there are no rules. Don't follow anyone's prescriptions about what to do or not to do in this space. Certainly not mine. Be playful, experiment. It's the wild, wild west out here, and we're shaping the standards now. We're shaping the best practices now. So, help shape it. The thing I want to say about this topic of like immersion, everyone says, oh, like, I really want to make a WebXR experience because it's going to be immersive. And I see a lot of things that are like kind of immersive this idea of like what is immersive is really interesting to me. Like I genuinely can say this. I've had phone calls that have felt more immersive than some VR experiences. And this isn't me knocking the VR experience. This is me saying that often what makes an experience immersive and compelling actually has very little to do with the graphics that are surrounding you. It has to do with the intrinsic nature of what it is that you're listening to and seeing. It's not about like, oh, that you can look all around and it feels realistic. It's actually about is what you're provoking in the user's mind something that is arresting and engrossing and interesting. And those qualities are, again, this is like a deeper challenge than just like, how do I make my experience immersive? Like, I think to really make something immersive, you've got to be thinking well beyond just the graphics and the quality of stuff around you. Yeah, and then, you know, go build stuff. Like, yes, build with Frame if you want, but build with other stuff too. There's tons of cool stuff out there. Once you get your hands dirty, you'll have a better sense of the direction you'll want to go. Okay, that's my spiel. We only got a few minutes left. If anyone's got any questions or thoughts, I'm happy to take it.
Right, do we have any questions in the Frame audience, or in Zoom if you want to type into the chat? We'll try and pick up any questions.
Brian, did this map to your expectations of what you were hoping I would talk about?
I think that was excellent, Gabe. Yes, I think bearing in mind the arc of the day as well, this really sets the scene for what is WebXR, and we're going to have great sort of presentations, including Richard's, which is next, to demonstrate Frame a bit more. But yeah, this was perfect. Thank you very much.
Cool.
So, do we have any questions at all for Gabe? Yeah. Let's have a look in the chat. Hang on. I think you've stunned everybody.
That's fine.
I know. I had one question that maybe some of you can just a very quick demo. Bearing in mind we're an international organization and we've often struggled with how we deal with languages. I know that Frame has got this fantastic text-to-speech and translation tool. Could you show us that in a minute or two? We have a couple of minutes left.
Yeah, absolutely. So this is only a feature that you can use, I think, if you're logged in. But if you are logged in, click on the text chat button at the top left, and below the text chat input, you'll see a little globe. And that globe lets you pick a language that you can translate the text chat into. So go ahead and pick something, pick Japanese or Arabic or something like that if you're logged in. And then what I'm going to do is turn on my speech to text mode, which I can do in my sidebar also if I'm logged in. So I'm going to turn on speech to text mode. And then if you've picked a text chat translation language, you'll see my words come into the text chat in the language you've chosen. So I'm going to turn it on. Hello, Brian. I am testing speech to text mode. I hope that it works. And I hope that some people have selected translation languages.
Wow. That is so awesome. That is incredible.
Yep, there it is. It's a great feature. And if you want to see the original, if you did have it translated and you want to see the original, if you hover over the message in the text chat, you'll see it in the original language. Thomas, you asked what sort of file is required to create a frame. If you're designing your own 3D model as a Frame environment or a model that you want to bring into Frame, the file format is .gltf. And specifically, there's a packaged form of GLTF that just packs all the meshes and textures into one unified file called a GLB. So we let you upload GLB models into Frame. And it's really easy to convert things into GLB if you know the tools. And just to create GLB natively, you can use something like Blender or 3ds Max or Maya. All of these have GLB exporters.
That's fantastic. Thank you very much, Gabe. That was really a brilliant start to the day. Thanks a lot. We're going to have to move along to Zoom for our next session, which will involve a little changeover. So if you either would like to go back to the day schedule, the event schedule, and pick the Zoom channel, or I believe we have a link. I'm going to see if I can post it in the chat here. But the best venue is just to go to your event schedule and flip to Zoom. We'll be in Zoom now for the next couple of sessions, so we'll see you over there. Thank you very much.